All right. Hey, everybody. Our apologies. My phone ran out of battery right near the end of the game. There was not much more after that Puma shot at the mortar team, which missed. The next turn, Randy came along and wiped out my last infantry unit, which, under the rules of the game and the scenario, made it impossible for me to win the game. So we called it at that point. And again, the victory condition was to hold an objective, and to hold an objective, you have to have an infantry unit. And Randy had a lot more of those left at the end of the game to put on the objective than I could have driven off.
Yeah, so I had moved up this submachine gun squad at the beginning of the turn that you didn't get to see, and his last infantry squad was right here in these woods, and it was just point blank, a ton of shots, and it just wiped them out. And this armored car had also backed up away from this building, so he had nothing to even contest this center objective. So
Yeah,
that was pretty much it.
yeah. So, first, reviewing the scenario itself, probably not a strong one for a tournament scenario, but we'll recap that.
I would say no. It's a lot of times attacker defenders are not good for tournaments, and this one definitely proved not.
Yeah.
Weighted heavily toward the attacker. And honestly, with me having a huge dice advantage and being the attacker, I think that just allowed me just to keep pushing in, and Mike didn't have a chance to breathe.
Definitely allowed Randy to control the tempo of the game. And I made a couple of critical tactical mistakes. I put all three of my armored cars on outflank. Thank you. As opposed to having maybe one on outflank and the other two coming in reserve. So they would have came in reserve on turn two and would have, significantly counterbalanced, what was going on with Randy putting the pressure on. But the other thing was, there was one other thing that I made a huge tactical mistake on. Maybe shouldn't have had a squad. Of my three squads that could hold objectives, I maybe should have had none of them up there and left them to counterattack, or maybe throw my sniper and maybe a machine gun team or a mortar team to hold the village until I could get the rest of my troops on. Hold an officer team out of a half track, probably shouldn't have. They ended up getting killed pretty easily. The half tracks really keep your officers alive very well, and that's a good argument for the one man officer. Randy and I were talking about after the game, and that is one thing, Randy. You got to keep your officer in the half track anyway.
Make him inexperienced.
Inexperienced in one, or at least just one. Yeah, inexperienced in one, because he's in the half track. He's not going to have to make cover saves. He's not going to get shot at by himself. So that's a good point. Maybe something I work with. Again, historically, it makes my teeth itch. Officers should be veterans, but that's just that's the old grognard in me. But even just taking those three guys out of the half tracks and maybe buying another team with those three guys or two guys, or putting them in squads instead of having them in the half track.
Yeah. So I think I'm also becoming a big fan of light mortars. They did a lot. I only have 4, but they did a lot of good work in this game.
The thing about mortars of all kinds is, of course, they're indirect, and HE doesn't get cover saves. So, it may not be much, but it's a +1 to kill, right?
Yeah.
So that's good for digging out veteran squads and makes life a terror for regular and inexperienced squads. And Randy just got, for example, I brought my machine gun team on, and he luckily dropped a light mortar on it right here. And I went from 3 men to 1 in one turn.
Yep.
Gotta say, he hung in there, and I got a little bit of work out of him, but not nearly as much as I would have gotten out of a full strength machine gun team. Ended up using my other veteran officer team as like a light assault team, just because I didn't have anywhere safe in the middle of the board to really put him in command. Had I left him in a half track, that might have been something different, but then I would have had a different use for him as opposed to an assault team.
But go ahead. So though, had you not done that, my light mortar would probably finish this off, because that's the one that was ranging in on it.
Yeah.
And he managed to kill that one with your officer team. So that in essence saved them.
My ATR team might have got him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely complicated the solution there.
These little markers here. So I had 2 forward artillery observers, and so it's just a constant bombardment of artillery, which was,
Well, and remind me, why was it? So you got 2 bombardments per observer because you're
British.
and they're
British.
free. Are they still free?
No, you have to pay for them.
Well, that's
So
good.
They just compensated that by giving them, an extra one.
And I haven't looked at the Soviets. The Soviets should get an extra artillery,
So-
extra bombardment too, but
No, what they get is what's called mass batteries.
Yeah.
So when it comes in and you roll for the diameter, they get to re-roll it. So
Oh,
if they only
okay.
get a one, they get to try to get it bigger.
okay, that makes sense. We also discovered in setting up the scenario though, that maybe we had too many of your vehicles on the board.
Yeah, yeah. So the one thing is, it says infantry units to the attackers, and we had a couple of vehicles. They were kind of minor vehicles, but it might have made a somewhat of a difference. We don't know.
All right. That was my wife. She tries to keep me straight and keep me on time. She does pretty good at both. There we go. But, let's see what else.
Anti-tank rifle teams are really good.
Oh, yes. And currently all lists allow them for all periods. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about early in the game where, essentially we're playing a D-Day scenario, but I've got NCOs with assault rifles, which historically didn't come into like, I think August or September of 44 or maybe later. They were fairly late.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. And then anti-tank rifles, which were pretty much out of fashion by 44. But, we had them. And Randy had them in spades. You had what, 2?
I had 2.
And I had 1. And I'll be right honest, I get a chance, I'll build another ATO team. They're worth having.
Yeah,
So
25 points, you can't beat that.
no, for a long range weapon that is a threat to both light armor and infantry, that's awesome. So, what other takeaways do we have, Randy?
No, other than, I think the dice count really makes a difference.
Yeah.
I think you really have to get your dice count up, upwards of 20 to be, and I imagine if you'd have played against a guy with 31 dice.
So that would have been even worse. Yeah.
But
And so you use things like the small teams, like the mortars, the anti-tank rifles, the Jeeps that the Americans just seem to poop out of everywhere. And the Germans have the Kubel wagon. And I've even seen some players take regular wagons. It's a cheap die. It's, it's literally soft skin, but it's a cheap die. And you can use it to move guns around. My force is absolutely an elite force. I still want to kick the tires on it a little bit, make a couple more tweaks. I think I can squeeze a couple more dice out. I may drop one of the armored cars. Randy recommends dropping the Puma. I may keep the Puma and drop the 6 Rad. I like the Puma for its anti-tank ability because if someone shows up with a medium tank, I want to be able to deal with it. Anybody shows up with a heavy tank at this point level, they've got so much invested in that one tank that you're going to be able to bust up the rest of the army pretty straightforward. But, I'm going to tweak the list. You'll see it again. I'm in love with the whole mechanized cavalry concept. So half tracks and armored cars are the closest things I have to ACR for the Germans. So yeah, you'll see them again. You may beat them again, but I'll keep at it until I figure out, I'll either change forces or figure out how to make them work. And, I think with all that being said, I think we're done.
all right, good game.
Thank you, Randy. Good game. Thanks for taking the time. Yeah.
Setting everything up.
Sure. Folks, thanks for watching. As always, if you want to support the channel, press like, press share, and subscribe to the channel. Best way to support us is buy some merch and buy us a cup of coffee at Ko-Fi or Patreon and share with your friends. See you next time. There we go.